Well, the organization was founded in 1969 by Canada, the United States, and the Netherlands. And basically it was executive policemen from around the world working interagency to work with each other, basically because of transnational crime and getting together. And obviously the world since 1969 has gotten a little smaller, and we work very differently today. Back then communication wasn't the same. You know, they would see each other maybe if they saw, you know, at an annual meeting or something. In today's world, we're basically working with any department around the world, and our job through the Interport Police is to actually have operational programs to help our departments. So we're working on identity management, we're working on information and intelligence sharing, we're working on counterterrorism training. So we're actually taking operational programs, learning exchanges, so everybody can learn about the way other people do things. Why reinvent the wheel, you might say. When we consider ourselves strong is that when we have active programs going. And what we're doing through our security resource member exchange, which is an information intelligence exchange, we're communicating. I think when you start keeping up with everybody, and this is a role-based situation, so law enforcement sensitive information can go back and forth. A lot of identity management, stolen visas, things of this nature, so we can notify people what's going on. Drugs. So communication is our first, I guess, portal in starting to get stronger in a particular area. And then obviously we look for, this last year we had one of your assistant commissioners from the Australian Federal Police over and got to talk a lot about Australia. I mentioned before we worked with the Australian Federal Police when they examined their airport police system, and we went through what we're doing in America, but we also talked to them about what other countries are doing. You know, we have 425 commercial airports in America where we have police. Your country, Australia, has 11. Korea has 1. The United Kingdom has 37. Okay. Also, in the U.S., the structuring is different. Now, I literally work with the world. And so what we try to do through our operational programs is look at the best of what other countries do. Sometimes you can be a lot more efficient when you have 11 versus 425. Sometimes you'll find what the United States, because the consumption and the amount is doing, works really well. But at the same time, we find out sometimes in other places it doesn't work well at all. Also, you take a country that has a smaller amount of airports, for example, or seaports, and they actually get to perfect things. And so we learn and bring that here. And I think what's been unique about my job, I've gone from being the U.S. Director of Airport and Seaport Police and Director of the U.S. Port Security Council after 9/11 here in America, is now the international flavor, and the fact that it's just great to share around the world and to find out what people are doing and take those best practices. Prior to 9/11, we actually started to accreditate airports and seaports, and we're looking to do that again. You know, what do the standards need to be? And again, criminals don't have borders. Only we have borders.
Only we do.
Yeah, we have rules, and they know what our rules are, okay? And so it makes it a bit more difficult. But in doing that, one of the things that I've enjoyed, we've worked a lot with the United Kingdom, and their intelligent SO-15, 18, MI5. And one of the things I think that's great is we can share. And sometimes things maybe are only a gut feeling. You can't arrest somebody, whatever it might be. But you have a personal relationship, so you can email them or you can get on the phone and talk to them. We've met with China, we've met with Thailand. I've worked with a lot of exchange programs from around the world. And again, I think we all do things a little differently, but we're all doing the same job. And so we all learn from each other. I think that we all walk away in that. So probably information sharing is probably one of the most abused words there are, okay, or sentences. We talk about it, but we aren't very good about it, okay? And part of that is how much you can share and who you can share it with. And that's what we've been focusing on, is using technology so that you can share what you want to share, and to make sure that you can trust who's getting it on the other end. And if, in other words, I don't mind giving this to another law enforcement officer, or maybe even the head of security of a cruise line, as long as I know who they are and as long as I know how it's going to be used. Because I think that's the hesitation, obviously. You know, technology is there to help us. It's a tool, but nothing replaces the human element. And I think that's one of the most important things about security and law enforcement. And it is really all about us getting to know each other. We have a website at interportpolice.org. And basically, through that, it's a portal that explains everything we do and how to get in touch with us and to work with us. We have about a little under 225 agencies currently at this. Yeah, to be we have individuals that used to be member that came from agencies, but basically it's an agency-based membership. So we deal with the agency. Obviously, it's an entity, so we're really dealing with the people. Okay, but and that's the other thing too. We really enjoy working with our former officers. We call them former officials, because depending on what they do, some of them go back out to the private industry, some of them stay and work with government. But we find that especially, we're now coming to a period, we're finding a lot of senior command people in law enforcement and public safety are now starting to retire. And so now we're 10, 11 years after 9/11. And so the vacuum was after 9/11, they kind of had to do what they want. In America, they pulled a lot from the Coast Guard. Every country is a little different. But we're seeing a fair amount of these people retiring now, and so it's been interesting seeing some of the jobs, some of what people are doing. And I actually think that it's been very nice, some of the places they've gone, some of the countries where they've done. For example, the cruise agencies. Yes. We've basically seen from a more civilian guard base to we're seeing more police officers. Over in Europe, basically all of them now are retired Met police officers. So we've seen that security change quite a bit because there's a different mindset, I think, from civilian security to law enforcement security. A different, when you look at our rules, kind of the U.S. has rules and then the world has rules, but you'll see a lot where government is doing it in the U.S., whereas, for example, a company like Securitas that I was over recently with in Europe, they're doing a lot of what we would do internally government here, are actually hired by the ports over there. So it depends on where you are and how they do it. But there is a large base of not only public employee, law enforcement and security in America, but also security. If you'll take, for example, the Port of Houston, which is I think about the fourth largest port in America, on the seaport side. So they have about 85 sworn police and about 85 security. And so that's a hired company, but once they're hired, it comes under the jurisdiction of police. What I was saying before is that we're seeing a lot of knowledgeable people that are retiring that are bringing some new knowledge to the civilian base because they lived it, they experienced it. One of the challenges, certainly in America and around the world, is money. Money's getting tighter and tighter. And we've done a pretty good job. And people forget, and I think that's been a real challenge, is keeping people saying, we can't stop this. I mean, that's how we're doing a good job. Now, well, certainly we're far away from being where we need to be, but we are doing a better job. And so we have a challenge of complacency. The other thing is, in different jobs, we're seeing people that are being educated in homeland security, defense security, but they don't have a lot of practical background. And so I think that we need to be careful there. It's great that someone gets an education, and I think that's a basis of moving into the security or law enforcement field. But in some cases, I think what we've seen, because there's such a great requirement for these types of people, that some of these people actually come from the education side and they're put in responsible positions and they haven't had the work experience. So I think it's a challenge always to make sure that we have both sides. It is interesting today that people are coming and getting graduate degrees in homeland defense. Whereas obviously after 9/11, certainly for America, we were, it was on-the-job training. For myself personally, it was unique because I would get interviewed and I would talk about terrorism and they would talk about, well, you know, Jay is an expert. He talked about it. And I said, well, nothing can be further from the truth. So what I did is I went to places like Israel. I went to Northern Ireland. I went to the United Kingdom, and I talked to other people around the world that actually experienced terrorism. And from that, I think we've learned. The other side is the technology side. There's two things. Technology is catching up where we actually are getting tools that are helping us. And I do look at technology as a tool. It's not going to replace the human element, but it's going to help us. But I'm also seeing technology move so quickly that in some cases we're looking at 18 to 24 month cycles before they come out with something new. And government doesn't work that way. You know, we don't have that kind of funding. And it's one of the things that we're looking at. We're actually coming out with a new identity management program called OnePass, which is a standard, one personal authentication security standard. And we're using software and high resolution cameras. And one of the reasons that we're looking at this, it's extremely advanced, is we actually think that we can institute it and cameras will get better, software will get better, but the premise isn't going to change. They're using the individual as the key in the biometrics. And actually through a federated system, we're actually going to be able to lower the price. You know, we've been using ID cards from pieces of paper today, what we call smart cards. Extremely expensive. And one of the things I learned when I started doing this about 5 years ago is everybody runs their own ship around the world. And so what we had to do is come up with a program that can fit. It's like a standard within a standard. We had to make sure what we put together could work inside other countries' standards. We're building this particular standard. We are taking this to the United Nations. I just met with the IMO. We hold consultative status with the IMO. ICAO, the aviation part, has that mandate from the UN, so we're going to be bringing that to them. Yeah. So we are going to be, now that we have this perfected, and it works very, very well, we are going to be working with other standard organizations. I've been working with NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards for America, to get their guidance. But it is a process that we're moving into. But it's very exciting because we're really leaping technology. I mean, this is a huge change to actually authenticate someone every single time, to use passive biometrics. I'm going, my next trip is to the Panama Canal. And so they've been looking at this. Part of their reason down there is thumbprints don't work very well because of the humidity. Right. So in addition to the individual challenges, we're also, with this particular technology, many people can be looked at and move through at the same time. If you use a turnstile, we can put about 50 to 60 people a minute through it. Right. If you had a corridor coming through of crew from an airline, they all can go through at the same time, and we can process them all at the same time. So what we tried to do with this particular technology, even though it can blacklist, it really was what we call whitelisting. We were trying to get all the good guys through. So we can go back to having the maximum security standards, but move things back to being what you might say normal, because we do have to get back to normal. We'll look forward to working with, obviously, the officials in Australia and the whole Asia-Pacific Rim. Again, the world needs to be more of a team, and we think that we can help that.
Great. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.